I see once or twice a year, and some people that I only get to see at conferences nowadays. So I'm here to talk about the mobile question, lessons in design and strategy for your mobile experience. So how many people either now or within the next 6 months are going to be working on some type of mobile project? All right, that's a lot of people. So obviously it's a big deal, right? A lot of people are going through this, and so I'm going to answer some questions about how exactly you can go forward with a mobile strategy. So just real quick, hello, I'm Jeremy Johnson. If you want to talk to me or about me, you could use this. So I work for a large travel company, and as a large travel company, we actually help lots of people get from point A to point B. So if you look at that, you would think, oh, okay, mobile devices fit very well within that, right? So, hey, we're helping people. They're out and about, they're flying, they're on trains. We're helping people get from point A to point B. But in general, mobile has actually been kind of a difficult question. And if you look back just a couple of years, let's say what I call pre-2007 or what I call BI, before iPhone, the mobile internet adoption was really low. So one of the most popular phones out at this time was actually the flip phone. How many people here had one of the Motorola flip phones? The hot pink one, probably, right? So it was very, very, very popular phone, but the mobile internet adoption in general was very low. It was around 12% or even less. And if you ever tried to use the internet on that flip phone, you would know why the adoption was actually so low. At South by Southwest this year, the guys from Pandora were up there speaking, and Pandora has a very popular application, obviously, streaming music. Who doesn't like to stream music on their device? So pre-2007, they were really working hard to get adoption with a lot of these feature phones. They were working with the carriers, working with the device manufacturers, making, for the time, as good as you can get experiences on these feature phones, and just could not get adoption. Where if you fast forward to today, now 40% of Pandora users are on mobile, and mobile now even has more sessions than the desktop side. So they're actually getting more than twice as many impressions on a mobile device than on a desktop. So this kind of shows you a trend of where things are going. So it was complex back then, before iPhone, back in 2007, and everything seemed really kind of far off, like all these location services and all this kind of stuff. It seemed like a dream almost, and it wasn't for a lack of people imagining how these things could go off. So Microsoft, they have a series of videos talking about mobile interactions in the future. Nokia is constantly coming out with interesting new things that they say will come out someday that some never actually come out. People are talking about the Google phone and what could that be. These were some artist renditions of the Google phone before Android actually came out. But then this happened, right? And like some crazy explosion that no one has seen before or since, the whole mobile industry was changed, and for the better, and I think everyone would agree for the better. If you look at other popular devices, like the iPod, so it took the iPod 17 quarters to reach 30 million units, where the iPhone did that in 10. And actually the iPad is on track to maybe do it even faster than that. And so now we have a lot of these really cool devices. So where the iPhone started, we have things like the WebOS, Palm, which was bought by HP, and we have some really cool Android devices. So now we have these devices that just a couple years ago would have been considered futuristic devices in our pockets right now. So it doesn't seem as far off, and it's a little less confusing. In a recent conference, they were talking about the next 10 years, and I like this quote. It said, for instance, the biggest companies in the world do not know what to do with mobile. I mean, I think from what I've seen, that's also true. No one really knows what to do. It's new. It's really relatively new. So how many people here have heard this from maybe a business owner or one of their managers or bosses? So yeah, or maybe some variation on it, maybe something like this, right? Do they need an iPhone app? That's a very common question. We've heard that as well. I gave this presentation at the IA Summit, and when you submit to the IA Summit, they actually sometimes send you some feedback, and this was a piece of the feedback that I received. And it said, why do they ignore all the devices except iPhone? Not everyone has an iPhone. Could you please speak to the non-iPhone users? And I've actually heard this phrase quite often from many different people. The problem is the user experience of whatever you're trying to create is really tied to the device, right? It has to be very specific to the device in most cases. And so depending on the device and your user base, the user experience is going to be vastly different. So for an example, let's say I was going to make a mobile wireframing tool. I want to make a tool where you could easily create mobile wireframes. You can connect them together. You could test them. Actually, these things actually do exist on the Apple Store and probably on Android as well. But you guys would actually be my target audience for that. So let's just do a little bit of research here about our users. So we could make this for the BlackBerry. So how many people here have a BlackBerry device? Okay, wouldn't sell too many of those. Okay, how about Windows Mobile? How many people here have a Windows Mobile device? Is Aaron still in here? Because I know he has one. Oh, we got 2, 3, okay. What's next? Okay, how about an Android phone? We have some Androids. Okay, all right, the numbers shouldn't come up. And how about an iPhone? Who here has an? Ah, there we go. There's a sweet spot. So if I was making something for you, if you guys were my target users, obviously it would probably be at least tailored to the iPhone, at least at first, and depending on budget and developer circumstances and things like that, which these are things that I'm going to go over. So, me again, the iPhone. So there are actually right now more than 85 million iPhone OS devices out there, and this is the iPod Touch, iPhone, and the iPad. And so it's really growing by leaps and bounds. So when talking about targeting a platform, Luke W. has been doing a lot of recent posts on data coming from the mobile side, and he had a couple good points. So iPhones can generate as much traffic as 30 basic feature phones. So lay out 30 feature phones in one iPhone. So that one iPhone will generate more internet usage and traffic than all 30 of the feature phones. 35% of smartphone owners browse the mobile internet at least once a day versus only 4% of the feature phone owners. So I'm going back to that question, why are we talking about iPhone so much? These are the reasons why we're talking about iPhone. 71% of smartphone users use the internet, 88% of iPhone users use the internet, 92% of Android users. They say the mobile web is kind of the killer app on smartphones when you look at what they're using. Apple even claims that the iPhone has 64% of the mobile browser usage. They have BlackBerry at 9%. Smartphones make up a small percentage of the world's 4 billion cell phones, but they differ drastically in their use, and that's the key there. So yes, there are billions of phones out there that by making something for the iPhone you will not be targeting, but if you look how they use those phones, they're not consuming data. So unless you have a very specific user case and you're just making some general applications, these people do not leisurely browse with their mobile devices. And so non-smartphone users don't use the mobile internet much, and really it's because it's not easy, right? If it's not easy, they're just not going to do it. So the next point is not everyone has an iPhone, so I want to come back to that. So this is actually the device I had. I left out Nokia. How many people have a Nokia phone here? Wow. Oh, Trio. I got a Trio call out. All right. Not one single Nokia device. That really blows my mind. So this is the device I had before I had the iPhone. It's actually this is their flagship. This is Nokia's flagship device. So the Symbian, which is the operating system on the Nokia devices, the request fell from 43% to 18% year over year. So they had 43% of smartphone market. It fell to 18. The iPhone OS increased the same time 33%, and Android is shooting up like crazy from 2 to 24. And just recently, it's been really blowing up. And if you look at this like on a chart, this is the AdMob chart for browser and app usage. iPhone's obviously at the top. Symbian is dropping like a rock, which, think of the lead that Nokia had in these devices. Android's going up quickly. RIM, Windows, WebOS, those are all I don't see Palm on here, so sorry, Alex. And I like this quote. This is on Daring Fireball. The BlackBerries are still today the best-selling smartphones in the U.S., and their web presence rounds down to 0. So it's just hard to use this stuff on a BlackBerry. They're just not doing it. And so it says 1 in 2 Americans will have a smartphone by Christmas. So people these are the types of phones they're getting. And if you take those stats, roughly 75%, and I kind of threw WebOS in there just throwing them a bone because it's not like the usage. It's actually a very nice OS. It's just not a lot of usage right now. Maybe HP will fix that. But you can target 75% of the really mobile consuming audience by hitting these 3 devices. So if you hit these 3 devices, you'll have 75% of people who really consume mobile data and applications. So the next question is, all right, so what do we need to do? So action, right? Everyone wants we need a plan of action. So I tried to put together a plan of action. This is something that you could possibly use in like a workshop with your business owners. So the first step is what kind of mobile experience are you creating? And basically I have 4 different categories for mobile experiences: mobile first, content, application or e-commerce, or entertainment. So the first one is, are you creating a mobile-first solution? And I'll define that as a solution that first exists to fill a mobile need or is more valuable on a mobile device, or only would exist on a mobile device. And I'll take Gowalla and Foursquare being similar as an example. These Foursquare and Gowalla just aren't that useful when they're on your laptop, right? In fact, there were services similar to those on laptops many years ago, and they just never picked up until it was dead simple and in your hand. Until then, people were not using it. So for them to win in this space, they really have to be on every mobile device. They're probably going to make native-based applications because they want to utilize all the features, and they have to be in all the different app stores. They really have to play in that space. There's a Tripcase application. This is a popular itinerary tool where, again, only really valuable on a mobile device. This is where you get your quick look when you're going to the airport. Is my flight late? What's going on? Shop Savvy, which is actually an application out of Dallas, a company in Dallas, where you pick up a book and you can scan the barcode and it'll tell you where the cheapest place to buy it. Again, things that are only really valuable on a mobile device. These things are not valuable as a desktop application. And if you'll notice here, they actually launched first on Android and then they moved to iPhone. And if you notice from a visual design perspective and partially a UX perspective, they followed a lot of the similar patterns across the application. So some quick notes there. So you want to, if you're mobile first, you'll probably want to start with a native application. You're going to need to hit all the major platforms, including web. You need to be prepared to hire these mobile experts that know how to do this. You're going to have to market in the app stores, and you'll have to watch as new devices are released to make sure your apps will work on these new devices. So if you're taking your content mobile, then, and this I would define this as a mostly text or photo-based application. Very little. There's not a whole lot of application-style interactions. You're really just kind of viewing content. It's what I would call a content application. So TripAdvisor recently released a web application that kind of has a mobile version of their content, and they actually do a lot of really cool things. So they use the thing like through browsers now you can actually get the location. So through the browser they're getting the location. They have their hotels, which is probably what they're known for, but then they even added some mobile specific features, things to do and what's nearby, right? There's New York City. They have a government site. They wanted to take it mobile. What did they do? There's quite a few companies nowadays that will take your desktop site and kind of what they call squeeze it down to fit on a mobile device. So they'll go in and kind of scrape out all the heavy stuff and just focus on the content in a slimmed down mobile design. So this is also an option if you're moving toward, if you have a content only site. TechCrunch, they have a mobile version now. Every time I go to TechCrunch on my iPhone, it would just crash my iPhone because it's such a heavy site with all these ads and everything. So now they finally have a mobile site, which is actually, this is also if you have a WordPress site and you use the WordPress mobile plugin, it'll look something like this. So if you have a content site, you need to evaluate your internal skill sets, research the value to even go mobile, like are people even on mobile devices needing to view your content, find out what devices your readers have, and then research the different development options. The third category there is a desktop web application or e-commerce, and so this is taking some kind of interactive application or site and moving it to a mobile platform. So 37 Signals, which is known for their probably very, very good but simple, well-designed applications, recently took their HiRise app mobile, and it's interesting to see. You can see a couple things. One, they cut a lot of the features, which is something you need to do, and two, they went and said, well, what's something valuable we could add that's only on the mobile device? And so since they were talking about an app for a phone, they went ahead and took advantage of voice. So you could actually record notes to the application. And like you've seen sites like, I'm sure you've all gone to the desktop version of Target, so they have a mobile version again, and then like Weather Channel. Everyone here shop for hotels. I like this one because it actually starts with a map. So again, trying to use the location, the context of the mobile device. So you need to see what technologies your developers are familiar with. So depending on how large your budget is, do you have developers who know web technologies better? Do they know C better? Do they know Java better? Take stock of the features and see how they match up for the devices, and see if you have services ready to kind of separate your desktop site to your mobile device. And the last category there is going for entertainment, and this is where you have things like games or sound or video or experiences that need deep phone integration and high fidelity graphics. Like one of my favorite games, Angry Birds, and there's a lot of DJ applications. So these are very heavy things, a lot of almost 100% custom. They're not using a lot of the native, any of the native OS UI elements. Like here's a MP3 application that will actually pull from your music library and then put lyrics on top of it. A lot of camera applications. So when you're doing these entertainment style applications, you need to learn about the pricing and gaming of the App Store. I'll go ahead and assume that you're wanting to price this entertainment thing to make money from it. You need to be prepared to create a native application. Design matters. The app stores are getting very large, and there's actually a lot of competition. And at South by Southwest, there's a couple tracks on people with entertainment style apps showing that if you had two next to each other, the one that had the better screenshots is the one that they were going to download. Watch your reviews. It's really kind of a game. Like it was funny to hear them talk about the pricing. Like they'll put it at $2, and then they'll discount it to $1, and then if it gets in the top 100, then they could raise the price back up. But they have to watch and make sure they don't fall under the 200. So it's really almost like a game that you have to watch. So the four categories are mobile first, content, application, e-commerce, or entertainment. So basically, if you're in a workshop situation, figure out which one of these your project fits into. So step 2 is time to get into the design process. And the big point there is don't forget your design process, right? So designing for mobile is actually very similar to designing for a desktop in general. The question we get quite often is what needs to go mobile, and the biggest point there is not everything. And just to show you an example, so let's take Amazon for instance. Amazon does a lot of good things, right? So they have a mobile native application. So you see here, this is the home page for the application. Here's a product page, and again, they have the value added for mobile, where they have actually have a feature where you could actually take a photo of a book, and it'll actually tell you exactly where that book is and how you could buy it on Amazon. But again, if you look at the home page here. And see there's the gold box, a couple recommendations, and search basically. Now let's look at their normal homepage here. So they cut a lot, right? And I could see the business owner for like gift cards, like screaming, like, no, it needs to have gift cards up there, right? But there are certain things you just don't need to do on a mobile device because it's a specific context, right? Although I will say a lot of people now are more leisurely doing things on mobile devices. A lot of times it's very contextual, like, oh, I just heard about this book, let me look it up and get it real quick, right? So you don't need to shove all this stuff in front of them. Here was a good quote, just, good mobile apps focus on few important tasks, right? So, resist the temptation to have it all there. So the plan there would be, what's needed for your business. So like maybe even list out the top 3 to 5 features. So give your business owners a kind of a box to play in there. Or are there features that are very specific to the mobile context that make really good sense to have on mobile? So then it's who are our mobile users? And so this is where there's kind of this kind of goal versus leisure. And this is where I think more and more people are getting lazier maybe. I don't know, but you might have your laptop 3 feet away, but since your phone's in your pocket, that's what you're using to do something. So that's what I would consider leisure. Goal-oriented would mean someone who is out and about and needs to find a pizza place or something, right? And the BBC recently had this whole kind of uncovering of their mobile strategy, and they have their own personas. And they had mobile first, addictive devotees, social animals, and mobile lifestyle. So again, this is kind of bucketing their users into personas so they know who they're designing for. And mobile first for them were people who would only see the BBC on a mobile device. And I think I actually thought this was a bit odd because the mobile first guy, the mobile lifestyle guy to me would look like the kid who maybe only would view BBC, and this guy looks way too old to not have seen BBC on anything else but a mobile device. But you can actually kind of pull these back in, right? So the mobile first, they're kind of a mix of goal and leisure because they're always on the mobile device. The addictive devotees, they're surfing leisurely on the couch quite often. Social people, it's more for leisure. And then mobile lifestyle, they're considering more the goal oriented. So these are people who really only use the mobile device when they're out and about traveling, looking for things. And so, like I said, I'd probably find some new photos for there. But in general, I think this is actually a pretty good persona of kind of list to start with at least. So those are the types of people. So what are our users using, right? Which is it's always good to go to users. So are they more an iPhone crowd or are they more a BlackBerry crowd? And again, we saw here that this is definitely an iPhone crowd. So analytics, obviously you could actually check your analytics. If you don't have any analytics or any knowledge of what your users are using, then again you could look at just the general trends. And again, general trends show things like Android and iPhone are obviously moving ahead. But you could have very specific cases. So maybe you have business users, maybe they're into international, and maybe you have an international audience, and maybe you're targeting IBM, and IBM gives all their employees BlackBerries for some reason. So if you had that specific case, you would need to tailor your experience for the BlackBerry for that audience. So who are our mobile users? What personas are you designing for, and what devices are they using? So then the next question is, okay, so we know who our users are, we know what type of thing we're trying to build, so how do you design for mobile? And so again, it's a lot like designing for other things. There are many different sketch kits out there where you can download, print out, start sketching out interfaces. There are stencils where you can stencil out mobile applications. There are whole Photoshop templates basically where you can drag and drop all the UI elements so you make sure you have all the UI elements at the correct size. Recently I saw it's hard to. It's funny because when you look at it on your screen, everything appears to be larger, right? And then because of the pixel density of the iPhone, so starting with a template to make sure you're getting all the objects the right size is actually a fairly big deal. You need to learn the different mobile UI. So although they are fairly similar, there's definitely differences between the 3 leading Android WebOS and iPhone OS, and then the Windows Phone 7, which is coming out, as Chris mentioned this morning, is basically they've decided to totally change everything. So they'll have a very different kind of mobile UI pattern. Look for archetypes. There was a post about trying to catalog the different ways people interact on mobile devices with applications. So what are people used to? Again, very similar things you would do on the desktop. And then to me, the biggest thing is really try, play, and use as many applications as you can. You really have to use these devices. Like if you're designing for one of these devices, you need to use it. Like you just have to use it day to day. You'll be amazed at how much you learn by just using the application, downloading every free application you could find, getting a little budget to buy your competitors' applications, and just really try to use them. You'll be amazed at how much you learn. And then when it gets down to the nitty-gritty details, which would probably be a whole nother presentation about how do you actually design for a mobile device, it would come down to things like finger versus a mouse, right? So a finger obviously need larger hit areas. So there's a whole slew of things like this when you get down to Photoshop and you start creating mock-ups or building prototypes. So how to design for mobile? Is it touch, click, scroll, or tap? Get the devices and try everything. Right? That's going to be the best way. So what devices do we need to focus on? And then again, the devices your users have. I mentioned analytics before, and we actually had an interesting thing where we only had a desktop site. But I think you'll be amazed at how many people will muddle through your desktop experience on a mobile device. So if you have a content site, an application, whatever, go ahead and check the analytics, and I bet you'll notice you'll get month over month you'll continually increase the amount of mobile traffic going to your site. Going back to the BBC, they actually, when they specified what they were going to do, they actually had listed that they're going to hit every mobile phone and every device here, which to me seems crazy. Like they must have some crazy budget over there or whatever. But so this was actually their plan. But people are talking about as the adoption rate of the iPhone increases, it become increasingly difficult to argue in favor of a starting point other than the iPhone OS. And actually, when the BBC released their first mobile application, it was actually in fact an iPhone application. Although again, they said in their plan they're planning to hit every single device. The only reason I think you would need to hit all those devices really is one, if you're mobile first. Again, if you're only valuable on the mobile device and you have competitors out there in the mobile space, you have to win on mobile devices. You're going to have to be everywhere your mobile users are. Maybe you have loads and loads of money to blow, then that would be a reason to do that. Or maybe you have some kind of super developer bank somewhere in some secret lab where they could really pump out all these different mobile applications. But remember, I think when you look at if you go through this step by step, I think you'll come to an answer, right? So let's say, for instance, you have a content site. The persona's mobile lifestyle, your analytics show you have a huge BlackBerry user set for some reason. Well, then that equals something. Option A, that would be come up with a WAP HTML site or maybe a native BlackBerry application, depending on the skill sets of your development team. So if you still have questions, maybe you don't have analytics, or you just have no idea who these people are coming to your sites, then you could just go with, again, the general statistics. Again, you could reach 75% of the mobile consuming audience with really just these two devices. And so there's a technology that's out right now called HTML5, which is the new Ajax, basically, as far as buzzwords go. And I'm going to talk about that. But what devices do you focus on? Check your analytics, survey your users, find out what they're using. That's really the answer. So then what technologies do we use? And this is where you'll get hung up a lot. So you'll get through all these steps, and then you get to the end. It's time to build the thing, right? So you'll have your development teams out there. You'll have people saying, well, I heard that we should only build for Android, or, oh, we only have Java developers, so we should build this. Or this is where it really gets really hard, right? So it's really hard. And the basic answer is native is better. So if you had an option to build a native application versus anything else, native is actually always better. It's just sometimes prohibitive due to cost or skill sets. So sometimes you just can't do that. So if you look today, this actually looks like a lot. Here are all the different options, ways you can get things on a mobile device. And it actually was worse than this 3 years ago. There probably would have been 20 things on the screen. And even today, Samsung, last week, released another OS called Bada or something. I don't know why companies are still releasing OSs. But what I like about HTML5, and while maybe I'll push it here a little bit, is really, from what I can tell, it's the most useful for getting a rich experience to the most mobile internet users at the lowest cost. And I don't think people can argue with that. I think that is true. So there are a couple of books coming out. There's actually an O'Reilly iPhone apps web app book coming out. And they actually listed the pros and cons, which I like. So the pros of going with an HTML5 type strategy are things like your web developers can use their current tools and knowledge, right? So if you have web developers sitting around, they already know how to build the mobile application that you're designing. You're not limited to developing just on the Mac OS, like if you're building an iPhone application. So there are lots of positive. It's almost a silver bullet for this one web concept of building once and deploying across multiple devices. It works with URLs and App Store. So when someone types in a URL, they can get this HTML5 site, and there are actually ways you can could take HTML5 sites and wrap them in wrappers and put them on the store, so they could actually find it in the store as well. And so actually a lot of the cons have been fixed recently. So some of the cons where you could not access all the cool hardware features, that's actually really not true anymore. Through things like PhoneGap and just the browser, you can actually access things, a lot of like the location, the accelerometer, a lot of the really cool features. Roll your own payment systems are fixing that, and it can be difficult to achieve sophisticated UI effects. I think HTML5 has more than shown. In fact, there's this huge Flash HTML5 debate you've probably heard about, where people are daily making some HTML5 thing that basically replicates what Flash could do as well. So I think it's very robust. O'Reilly also wrote about, they were saying HTML5 is the baseline of where mobile browsers are heading. HTML5 compatible browsers, which is a good thing. So we're on the desktop. If you were any type of web developer, you've had IE6 be the bane of your existence for years. On these new mobile devices, they're actually all very, very similar, which is nice, where you could actually write it once and have it across multiple devices. And in fact, they claim that 85% of smartphones out there are going to have a browser that's compatible with HTML5 and advanced CSS type stuff here soon. And so what's also good about these web apps are, it's a web app, but it doesn't feel like a web app. So Apple even, because they even started with the web app strategy before they moved to the App Store, their help guide on the iPad, for instance, you would not know it, but it's actually HTML5 and JavaScript. Their iAd initiative, that they said that was going to be all built in HTML5. Google has had a web-first strategy for some time now, and so they have HTML applications they have an iPad-specific one, iPhone, Android. So they have it across all the applications. And again, things like PhoneGap are there, where you can actually take all these HTML5 applications and wrap them and then actually launch them in the store if that's something that you need to do. So what technologies do we use? Well, so is native a must? Are you competing in the mobile space? Is there some feature that's not available where you have to go native? What type of developers do you have access to? Can something like HTML5 work with your users or devices? So these are the questions that you would be asking. And so then when it comes down to decision time, again, you're just kind of wrapping all these kind of decision points and kind of trying to decide what exactly you should do. And it's almost like like an old school decision tree or something. Multiple platforms, yes, then kind of thing. And actually, I'm putting together a kind of just a one-pager that'll be on my website that you could download and take to like a workshop with you, or pass out at a workshop and have people fill out. And so they kind of start to see exactly why you're making the decision to go with just an Android phone or just an iPhone or a native BlackBerry application. So this gives them a bit of ownership, so they understand why you're doing these things. So last, I just wanted to leave with some mobile trends. So location, obviously a big deal. Again, everyone here is probably using some type of location-based device. What I liked about Yahoo actually mentioned recently that that Yahoo is going to start going after more contextual-based local advertising. So really trying to look at where you are and then serve up relevant content. So obviously, Yahoo, this is a strategy they're going to move forward with. The check-in applications, very going very well. In fact, this was a screenshot from the App Store after South by Southwest, and all of the popular applications on the App Store were all location-based applications, which is pretty amazing. So you had Foursquare, Gowalla, Looped, Whirl, My Home, all those different ones. And I think Foursquare just said yesterday they're getting 10 million check-ins a second or something crazy. So, people are using these check-in-based services, which there's a lot of really cool things that can be built on top of that. Mobile gaming, I think mobile gaming's picking up. I'm a big gamer myself, and I have a 5-year-old who's also a big gamer, and we love doing things on the iPad and the iPhone. And if you look at the market share, it's increasing rapidly, and it'll be interesting to see someone like Sony or Nintendo get kind of scared of this. Of course, the iPad. So when I first gave this presentation, the iPad had just come out that weekend, actually. But now it's been out for a while, and I've seen many of you here with iPads. And so the question was it a big iPhone, right? It's doing well. At the time, they had almost 450,000 apps, I think, with 3.5 million downloads. Or no, I'm sorry, there's 450,000 sold or whatever with 3.5 million apps. But I just checked the other day, and now 1 million iPads sold in 28 days, which was faster than the iPhone. And they have 13 million app downloads already on the iPad. So a lot of people are talking about you need to be developing for the iPad right now, and there's becoming more and more interesting. It's kind of like when the apps for the iPhone first came out. It really kind of took a while before before the really good stuff started coming out. Like Wired released their iPad app, which is actually pretty cool. NPR has a really cool experience that really only works on the iPad in the way they've built it. Gowalla has an iPad app, which is actually which is really nice. It kind of gives you a better overview of where all your friends are. Amazon recently released an application, and they're even from a design perspective, they're following a lot of the design patterns of where making it look like real world things. So here's a bunch of papers stacked on your desk, your iPad, right, where you can kind of sort them. So that's the iPad. The Windows Phone, which Chris talked about this morning, this was Foursquare. I don't know if I'm assuming they're partnering or something with Microsoft, but this is how they were imagining Foursquare would look on the Windows Phone. So if you have Foursquare, you'll realize it looks nothing like this today, right? So the experience for the Windows Phone is radically different. So it'll just be interesting to see if that ends up being a good thing or a negative thing. Will they be able to get developers to bring over all their applications? We know a little bit about it. The native apps are built in Silverlight. It'll be out by Christmas. We think the browser is going to be based on IE7, which could be a possible negative for a web app strategy because we all know IE as a browser and it may or may not render certain sites correctly. Android has been really taking off. It's doing really, really well. Flash on mobile. So Flash has actually had this Flash Lite strategy for many, many years, and it's never, I don't know, it's never seemed like it's really taken off. And so then they came up with this way of taking Flash applications and recompiling them for the iPhone, and then yeah. So but Apple wasn't happy, and so then they had the campaign about how they actually love Apple, and you know, yeah, it's I don't know anybody that follows this whole thing here. It's pretty interesting, and in fact, Travis had a thing on Keynote Kung Fu earlier, and Keynote's getting so powerful. I wonder if they even have that as a backup plan in case Adobe pulls Photoshop or something. You know, so I mean, it's like Apple would be ready to go without Adobe, or maybe they'll just buy them, which would be nice. But Flash is actually now running on these Android devices. There's different reports. Some people say it runs actually pretty well, and some people there's demos where things are crashing, or it's like really utilizing the battery life. Or so I think it's. I don't think Flash is yet a viable solution. It's kind of you kind of have to wait and see. So again, HTML5, which I mentioned before, the only new thing I'd mention there is so Google now has this Chrome web store that opened up recently, and there's been some articles about how it impacts smartphones. So if Google is opening their own store and their strategy they're taking is a web-first HTML5 strategy, they could easily start having these apps being ported over to mobile devices. So maybe they'll have a Chrome mobile app store as well. So Google is going in this direction. You know, Apple is going in this direction. But really, that's it. So. Thank you very much. Yes.
Did you see that Walmart's going to be selling the free iPhone 3?
Yes, my mom got one for her birthday. Actually, it was $97. My mom's been wanting one. So yeah, Walmart now has the iPhone 3GS for $97. I think June 7th is the WWDC conference where Steve Jobs will probably announce the next version of the iPhone. It'll be interesting to see if they keep the 3GS around. As maybe their low-end phone, and maybe the newer one's going to be $200. But every generation of iPhone sells faster and more, and the cheaper it gets, the more it's going to sell. So again, when you're looking at what platform you might want to be targeting, that's also something to look at. Any questions, or we get T-shirts? Yes.
So it seems like I'm hearing. Thanks. And you sort of touched on it, the whole television thing. BBC obviously knows that television is going to mobile devices. Where do you see the whole television, like all the networks playing in that space, and what are they going to be doing?
Yeah, well, so again, I thought it was interesting that BBC had a persona that they claim that is an active persona that they're targeting. That was their mobile-first persona, meaning this is a person who will never see BBC on a TV or on the internet. Like these are people who really only consume it on a mobile device, and I'm imagining these to be probably younger people, you know, most likely, right? I mean, most of the major TV players are moving to be able to have their content displayed on a mobile device, and you'll hear a lot of the Flash versus HTML5 in the video space, meaning are they going to convert the video to be able to be played on things like the iPad? So like CBS, for instance, has just a regular website, and they recently reconverted all their stuff to work on an iPad because it was all based in Flash before, and so now you can go to CBS and watch Survivor or whatever. So, I mean, I think that obviously the TV. The TV, they need to be, well, the BBC is different, I guess, because, right, it's not nonprofit, but it's funded by the government, so I don't know their advertising scheme, but CBS knows that they need to be where people are viewing their content, and more people are viewing their content on the desktop, and then eventually that'll trickle onto the mobile device, right? And so if they're going to sell to advertisers, they need to be also there on the mobile device. So I think if anything, it'll just get bigger. So. Yeah.
I have two questions, if there's time. The first one is are there any statistics, or do you have a general feel or your expert opinion on the rate of change in the mobile presentation, mobile UI, mobile apps versus the rate of change on the desktop? I mean, just the churn, the fact that people crank out mobile apps in a few weeks, and versus, we used to wait 6 months or a year for websites to update. Any stats or anything like that that we should be aware of in terms of knowing how we handle that in our own business?
Well, so I think in general, I think it's actually just been a general a trend. Again, I'll go back to 37 Signals, right? So build simple applications, launch them, and continue to iterate and complete them. Unlike a large company who sometimes waits till every single feature is finished before launching something, they're launching and seeing how things are going. So I mean, there's a couple things you could say that mobile startups are maybe they're probably more young type people in the startups even, right? So they're using some of these newer methods. They're using some of these like Ruby on Rails and these technologies that seem to be fast and quick and where they can just pump something out in a week. And there's a game called, I think, Project 72 where they made a whole, spaceship flying game in 72 hours. So you could attribute it to the type of people building them, the in the mobile space, the type of people who are targeting that. You could attribute to the features. So a lot of times feature sets on mobiles are actually less than a desktop, right? So you don't need as many features on something that's contextual and mobile. Think of Foursquare Gowalla, for instance. What do? You see a spot, you create a spot, you check in, and you're done, right? Whereas if they were going to build something different on a desktop, it would probably have to been way more complex than that, and they would have had to make sure it works on 50 different browsers, and it would have all these features. So I don't know. That's
do you think we'll have a backwards effect? I mean, do you think that we'll start to change the way we approach desktop applications because of what's happening in the mobile space?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of desktop computers out there, but there's more mobile phones out there, and I think if you just see as a society, if we move towards smaller devices, then yeah, I mean, I think it's an ongoing trend, to make things quicker, release more often, focus on features that really matter, so.
Making a shortcut here.
Thank you. You talk really fast, but I understood everything pretty much.
All right.
It was great. It's great information. In your quick notes in your step 1, you talked about what to look for in a mobile expert and definitely having a mobile expert. What expertise are you looking for when you're looking for a mobile expert?
So I guess it depends if you're talking about the design side or the technology side. I guess
I guess a little bit of both.
Okay,
probably.
so I think I was probably talking more about the technology side. So I've personally seen cases where they've taken regular developers and then try to get them to, they can make an iPhone app. They're developers, and here, play with this. And if you're a native first application, so you really got to play in the mobile space, you got to look sharp. Again, design matters. People are looking at screenshots to determine which one they're going to download. User experience really matters, and so therefore you need the pairing of a really good designer, right? A really good user experience person, and you need really good developers. So you can't just take some random let's say you're a medium-sized company, maybe you outsource or offshore to some .NET development or something. Those people may not be able to transition to Object-C for an iPhone application. Right? I know they'll probably tell you they can, but when they actually try to do it, I think you'll be surprised at what you'll end up with. So, I mean, you just need to find people who actually know how to develop, how to bend the rules. Because again, if you're really trying to make a really rich, really sharp application, you're going to have to bend some of the normal rules that are in these development kits. So you just need to find someone who has, and it's hard to find someone with experience because this is all very new, right? So you really just need to find sharp developers and designers, and you'll need to most likely pay more for these developers, right? Jennifer?
Okay. I have a question.
That's fine.
Are you seeing any trends in the youth market, predominantly between the ages of maybe 14 to 18, the high school age, that have mobile phones in education apps?
So I've already seen where schools are actually already going to give you the option of a laptop or an iPad, right? So I have a 5-year-old, but I'm occasionally around, people have kids in the teenage. And it's pretty interesting. A lot of them, and if they don't have a phone yet, like if their parents haven't decided to buy them a phone yet, or maybe they've given them a cheap phone just for the calling home, they'll actually give them an iPod Touch as well. And a lot of schools are starting to have Wi-Fi, so they're able to, at school, have Wi-Fi. And in fact, I know, I think maybe he's 9 or something, but they actually have it's either like a day or a class period where they have the Wi-Fi on, and everyone's able to use their mobile devices in this period or day or something. And so I obviously, if kids like to use it, if they feel more engaged in it, and like even some of the games I have for my 5-year-old, like some math games and spelling games, and we play Scrabble on it. I could say let's play Scrabble on the board game, or I could say let's let's play Scrabble on the iPad, and there's just something interesting about the iPad. It's the same thing, you know, it's like kids are just drawn to digital game type things, you know, so I would only see that getting bigger, so. One more time?
So kind of going back to the question about desktop, you know, the comparison between the two, made me think, are there any trends that we're seeing that show any particular app or series of apps that actually are outperforming their desktop or their more common just web-based, strictly web-based counterparts? Because what I'm thinking is, if we have to simplify all these interfaces down to real specific features and functionality to get them to be usable and useful on mobile devices, I mean, that speaks to just even best practices in web design in general, but yet we don't do that. So I'm wondering if we're seeing a trend.
Well, so a couple things. So the Pandora app, as I mentioned, they actually gave stats, and they said it was 2.5 times more impressions on the mobile side than on the desktop side. And so they actually have, and I think that they have more like more mobile users than they have regular users or something. So I think Pandora's kind of shown this. There is an interesting balance because, like on the Amazon example, for instance, a lot of that was advertising, right? Probably it was some sales team or something, and they, for the mobile device, as user experience practitioners, were able to say, listen, you can't throw all that in there; they won't use it. Do you want to be on mobile or not, right? And then we're able to get them at bay. We're able to hold off the sales guys, which we normally can't do. But eventually, they're going to want to come back around. So if they don't find smarter ways to monetize things on the mobile device, they're going to come back around and say, no, we need those big banner ads. You know, I want half the screen to be an ad. I want to fly out. You know, so I think there is something that could potentially happen there. But I know, like, there's certain things that I'll be sitting at my computer, and there's certain things like Twitter actually is one of them. Instead of going to Twitter, I'd rather pick up my phone and go to Tweety. And it's just simpler. It's my computer could be doing something else, or it's being slow or something, and on the mobile, just click, click, scan, and I'm there. So I find myself doing that. I'm assuming other people probably do as well. So, all right, anything else? All right. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.